Despite everything this year had in store, at least we had some pretty banger movies. I watched a lot of new releases, more this year than any previous year, and again, it was a pretty banger year for movies. I figured that as this year comes to a close, why not look back at some of my favorite movies of the past year, and as a precaution, these are just my opinions, so disagree all you like, and feel free to put your favorite films of the year in the comments down below. I love Cape Shit, and I love James Gunn. So when I learned that he was going to be making a Suicide Squad film, I was ecstatic. He's the perfect director to make a Suicide Squad film, and he most certainly did not disappoint. The Suicide Squad is a fun, action-packed ride like no other in comic book films. And it knows it's a comic book film and leans into the camp, leans into the goof of it all, but yet it isn't afraid to have some heart. Its characters are so enjoyable to watch be horrible people that it oozes that James Gunn style and color. Goddamn Gunn, please make another, and I personally cannot wait for Peacemaker. Until this year, I had never seen any film by Paul Thomas Anderson until I was shown There Will Be Blood for film school. And then I went and saw Licorice Pizza, and oh boy, this was something special. It's one of those movies that don't have a plot, it's just character interactions that drive the story forward, and these characters are great. The constantly shifting dynamic between Alana and Gary is great. It's just a really fun time in the 70s, would highly recommend, especially for every scene that Bradley Cooper is in. If there's one thing I know for a fact about Ridley Scott, is that he's the best at making movies about dudes with swords, and this movie cements that. The Last Duel is my favorite thing Scott has done since Gladiator. It's action, it's raw, it's gripping, and the story and format even more so. The way Affleck and Damon decide to split up the narrative into 3 perspectives to show how facts don't dictate perspective, rather emotion. Jodie Comer gives an excellent performance, same with Damon and Driver. This is the type of movie that got me and a lot of other people online saying, they really don't make them like they used to. These are the types of movies we need to be supporting. One movie that I did not expect myself to be excited for and loving was Spencer. This is easily one of the best biopics I've ever seen, on par with First Man, which I adore. But this is much more intimate. Kirsten Stewart is absolutely remarkable as Princess Di, and we truly get a sense of what her life was like during the weekend in which the film takes place. This intimate journey was shot on film, and because it's so beautifully portrayed, it shows. This biopic was a magnificent standout for 2021. Legacy sequels are a tricky thing, and this was one I was cautiously optimistic for. The marketing was sublime, but the film was even more so. Lana Wachowski's The Matrix Resurrections is a brilliant legacy sequel, building upon the foundation laid by the trilogy she and her sister started over 20 years ago. It does what the Star Wars sequel trilogy tried to do in 3 movies, but in 1. The Force Awakens was Episode 4 retold to ease people back into Star Wars, back from the prequels, and The Last Jedi was going to be something special, something new, something different. With this new Matrix, they basically gave us the Force Awakens treatment for the first 30 minutes. And then let the rest be the mind-bending, idiosyncratic Wachowski vision I wanted from a new Matrix film. It's a genuine love story made by someone who puts so much passion into their work. This movie surprised me with how genuinely good it is. The Matrix is back, baby, and I'm here for it. Macbeth is my favorite Shakespeare play, so when I learned Denzel Washington was going to play the titular character in an adaptation with a Coen directing, I was instantly on board. This was absolutely incredible. As someone who loves the story being told, everyone's performance was spectacular, and the production design is immaculate. Some have said that Joel Coen shooting this in 4:3 in monochrome is artsy, with using air quotes, of course, but he utilizes it to make this movie a feast for the eyes, and the use of lighting is the best I have possibly ever seen. Please let Joel Coen make more Shakespeare adaptations, please and thank you. For this one, I was on a similar boat with Licorice Pizza. I was only introduced to the mind of Wes Anderson when I'd watched The Grand Budapest Hotel a month or so prior, and that immediately hooked me to his visual and storytelling style. I immediately became a fan of Wes Anderson, and The French Dispatch is the most Wes Anderson anyone has ever Wes Andersoned. While the 3 stories being told by the magazine are not all equal in quality, they are all magnificent and ooze color in Anderson's distinct style. The French Dispatch is a marvelous piece of filmmaking with a hilarious all-star cast that only boosts its quality. God, this movie was great.
Just try to make it sound like you wrote it that way on purpose.
On the same level as the tragedy of Macbeth, there was another retelling of a very old story, this one much older than Macbeth, but this one was an adaptation of the poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it is immaculate. As a big fan of Arthurian myth, the Green Knight is a visual feast to behold, a work of art that amplifies the themes of chivalry of the original poem thanks to Dev Patel's brilliant performance and David Lowery's absolutely brilliant directing. While this movie may be slow and uninteresting, for me it is the exact opposite. I would frame any still from this movie and hang it on my wall. It's beautiful. Denis Villeneuve is probably my favorite filmmaker working today. His films are some of my favorites ever made, namely Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival, so the constant delays of his adaptation of the seminal science fiction novel Dune were painful. This had been my most anticipated movie of the past few years, and like many of the other films on the list, it did not disappoint. This film magnificently brought the works to the screen in ways I couldn't even imagine. Everything in this film is pure and brilliant. From the cast and their portrayals of these characters to the set and production design, it has some of the best CGI in a science fiction film, and Greg Fraser's cinematography just elevates everything about it. I have no idea why Timothée Chalamet isn't in the Oscar conversation for bringing to life Paul Atreides, a famously unadaptable character. Part 2 of this epic is easily my most anticipated movie of the next few years, second only to The Batman. This is a pretty much perfect science fiction movie. This is the perfect superhero movie for me, and it took long enough to get it. I'm a massive fan of Zack Snyder and his DC films especially. Man of Steel is my favorite movie ever made. And this film, man, it's just beautiful. Sure, it's 4 hours long, but I could sit through it easily. I don't really know how to explain my uncompromising love for this film other than to say this story, these characters by this filmmaker, mean so much to me. And that's what art should do, right? It should move you. It should be an inspiration. That's what Zack Snyder's Justice League is to me. Not a day goes by where I don't think about this movie. That's just what art is supposed to do, I guess.